Come here. Welcome to the Beehive. We have Bebop at the Beehive. Say hi, Bebop. She's a little shy today. She's having a good time. She's always climbing all over me and everything. It's really crazy. Welcome to the Beehive, everybody. We're here live in the hive. And we're going to have a really great show today. We're going to talk about the early 90s of Speedway motorcycle racing. Do you know Speedway motorcycle racing? It's cool. And we're going to talk about it right now. And first, we'd like to ask you if you want to go ahead and like and subscribe to the Speedway channel. We're going to be doing lots of Speedway shows coming up. We had some really great shows. We just recently had the two-time world champion Bruce, the Fox Penhall. He was on the show a couple of days ago, and he was amazing. That guy has done it all. And we're going to have some really great shows. We have Siggy in the house, and he's going to do part 2 of his live stream interview coming up in a little bit. And we're going to have Siggy, and we're going to have some up and coming Speedway riders. Yeah, we're going to have some of those young guns who are going to be the future of the sport. We're going to have fun with them. We have Sebastian Palomisi. Do you know Sebastian Palomisi? He's a good rider. That guy can ride. I saw Sebastian when he was just a little kid, like 5 years old, and had this big motorcycle helmet at the Industry Speedway. And Sebastian was about that big. He was a little guy. That was cool. And now Sebastian's riding the big bikes, and he's going really fast. So we're going to have Sebastian, and we have the great Gino Manzares. We're going to try to get Gino on the show. He's working a lot, so we're going to have to fit Gino's show in between his work schedule. But we're going to try to do that. We're going to get Gino Manzares. And so we're going to talk today about the 1990s Speedway show. And we're actually in the 1990s was really great. We had the 3-time United States Speedway champion. I mean, this guy was good in the 1990s. He was good for about 50 years. She's laughing. It's not really funny. We had Flying Mike Faria. He was a 3-time U.S. Speedway champion in the 1990s. And I raced against Faria in the 1990s, and he was fast. I think Mike Faria was actually in his prime in the 1990s. That guy was good, and he was good all the way up till retirement a few years ago. He was like 60-something years old before Mike Faria finally gave up the racing and hung up his steel shoe. But he was a legend, a real living legend. Mike Faria, Flying Mike Faria. That guy's good. And so we had him for 3 United States Speedway championships in the 90s. I thought he was going to win all the United States championships because that guy was unbeatable, but he wasn't winning all of them, but he won 3. That's pretty good. Mike Bass won 7 in the 70s, and that was amazing. So winning 3 championships in the 90s isn't very bad. Also, we have a 2-time United States Speedway champion in the 1990s, Sudden Sam Ermolenko. Sudden Sam, he was a world champion and a 2-time United States Speedway champion in the 1990s. So that was really cool. And so let's see, what else do we have here? We had 2-time United States Speedway champion Greg Grin Herbie Hancock. Greg Hancock was a 2-time Speedway United States champion in the 1990s. So Greg was an amazing rider. He was good. And then they had 1-time United States Speedway champions. You had the radical Rad Brad Oxley. Rad Brad was an incredibly good rider, and he won a United States Speedway championship in the 90s. And you had another world champion winning a United States championship in the 90s. That was Billy the Bullet Hamill. He was good. That guy was a bullet for sure. That guy was fast as lightning, and he was an amazing rider. And we had the bad boy. I have a story today about the bad boy. We have Steve Lucero. Do you remember Steve, bad boy Lucero? He was a bad dude, and he was good. I raced Steve. We almost got in a fight back in the 90s because I was being a little dirty. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Steve Lucero and me, we're going to have a fight. Yeah. That was a good time. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but not now. And in the 1990s, you had the bad boy. Actually, we just had the bad boy. We had Bart Simpson Bass. Bart Simpson was a nice guy, pretty much. I didn't see him getting too many fights, although a little bit scuffle. But Bart Bass won his only United States championship in the 1990s. So that was pretty cool. Bart Simpson Bass. And in the 1990s, there was a lot of Southern California speedway tracks in the United States. And they had like Lake Paris. Lake Paris was a speedway track over by the dam. They had this like dam over in Paris. And then the speedway track was actually right next to the dam, below the dam. So if the dam broke, we would all be wiped out. We'd be flooded out. It'd be like the Great Flood, but there was no flood at the Lake Paris Speedway. Also, we had Victorville Raceway. Do you remember Victorville Raceway in the 1990s? That was the time that Gene Woods was the promoter of Victorville. I think he took the speedway track that wasn't doing very well, and Gene Woods turned it into really an amazing show. There was packed house and there was lots of people, and I even rode there, and I rode all these tracks back in those days. And I remember going to the mall and meeting people, and they say, "What are you doing?" I say, "I'm going to be riding Speedway tonight." And they're like, "We're going to Speedway and we will root for you." So I had a lot of fans because Victorville was hot, and Gene Woods made an amazing racetrack. Lots of people. It was full of the crowd. It was an amazing show. Victorville Raceway was pretty cool. We had a good time back in Victorville. And also we had Costa Mesa Speedway. Do you remember Costa Mesa Speedway? That was cool. We had Larry Huffman announcing. I have a story I'm going to tell you about Larry Huffman. And Larry Huffman was on our show a few days ago. He's an amazing announcer, a true legend. Larry Huffman is just one of the greatest announcers ever to announce the sport in the United States. He's retired now, but he wants to announce at Bakersfield, I think. Maybe Steve Evans is going to get his butt over to Bakersfield and do the Speedway race over there. So let's see what happens over there. So we have the Costa Mesa Speedway in the 90s, and we have Glen Helen. Do you remember Glen Helen? Do you remember Glen Helen was really like a cool track. It was really big and long, and it was fast. When we rode at Glen Helen, it's not that funny. Here, Bebop wants to say hi to you. So come on, say hi. Hello. Say hi, pretty girl. No, she's shy? She's shy. Oh, she's usually not very shy. She's not very shy. She's a daddy's boy or something. Girl. I think she's a girl. So we had Glen Helen. That was a really great racetrack. It was fast, and it kind of got you going. And also in the 1990s, we had 3 world champions from the United States. And we had, let's see, Sudden Sam Ermolenko. Do you remember Sudden Sam Ermolenko? He was 1993 world champion. He was a good rider, Sudden Sam. That guy was suddenly fast, and he was a rough and tumble rider, and he was a tough guy. Sudden Sam, you don't want to mess with him. He will get you. So we had Sudden Sam back in the 1990s, and we had 1996. We had Billy the Bullet Hamill. Billy Bullet won a United States championship and a world champion. in 1996. And the following year, one more year later, in 1997, we had Greg, Grin, Herbie, the best Hancock. Greg is amazing. He won, I think, like 4 world championships, and he won one in the 1990s. I think he won his last world championship when he was like 46 years old. I mean, the guy was old, and he was winning the GP series. That was amazing. Greg Hancock. We would love to talk with Greg. He's just an amazing rider. And overall, in the 1990s, it was a very good time for Speedway. The 1990s had some really great legends. Maybe the 1990s had the most living legends racing at one time. I mean, these guys were good. And if you raced Speedway in the 1990s, it was hard, especially Division One. You're racing all these guys. I mean, it was like impossible to win the main event in the 1990s because the guys are so good and, you know, so fast. And there's a lot of living legends in the 1990s. So going back to the Costa Mesa Speedway, it was really good. It was alive. It was well. Larry Huffman was the announcer. I think he retired like in the later 90s or got fired. I think he said he got fired. I said to Larry, how did you get fired, man? You're a living legend. I would never fire Larry Huffman. And he said he was making that movie On Any Sunday Part 2. And the promoter, Harry, I guess, got mad. I guess he missed some races or something. I don't know. And he got fired. But Larry Huffman was announcing back in the 90s, the early 90s for sure. I remember one time I was racing there in the early 90s. And this guy had this horn, you know, those big, long horns that make that loud noise. And this guy was going, this guy kept blowing this horn. And Larry Huffman got mad, you know, he was like pissed off. And Larry Huffman said, hey, you know, shut your mouth, quit blowing that horn. And then the guy kept going, and Larry Huffman got pissed. And then Larry Huffman was telling the guy, like, hey, if you don't stop blowing that frickin' horn, I'm going to take that horn and ram it up your ass. Larry Huffman was mad. I had that on video, so I watched that over and over again. Larry Huffman yelling at this guy. And then after Larry Huffman told the guy he's going to stick this horn up this guy's ass, I heard the horn go, that was funny. Larry Huffman was mad, and I was laughing my butt off when I heard Larry yelling at the guy, shut up, and the guy kept blowing the horn. It was loud, and it was really pissing Larry Huffman off. So Larry was a fun guy, and he got mad at that horn. I remember I didn't talk to him about that. Maybe he'd get mad. Paris Speedway was really crowded back in the 1990s. They had good races at Paris Speedway, and they had a good promoter. I think his name was like Brian Church or something. And they had a really nice setup, a nice track. The Paris Speedway was below that dam, the Paris Dam, and the dam never broke, thank God. And it was fun. And, you know, they had a good announcer. Scott, I believe, was the announcer. He's a friend on Facebook. And he was a really good announcer. The whole crowd was really great. We're going to tell a story about the Paris Speedway, but not right now. Actually, I lived right next to this Paris Speedway back at that time. I had my first house. It was a big 5-bedroom house, and it was like 5 minutes from the Paris Speedway. So I think it was like, I can't remember what night it was, Friday night or something. I would just go like 5 minutes from my house to the Paris Speedway track. And that was nice. I was a hometown rider, and they built me up as a local guy. So that was pretty fun. But now I don't live in Paris. I live a little further away than the Paris Speedway. But that was a lot of fun. We'll talk about, I have some good stories we'll tell about that. And then let's say they had Victorville. Victorville Speedway out in the desert, and Gene Woods promoted it at the time. Victorville was really a great track. It was kind of a smaller track, like Costa Mesa size. It wasn't that big, really. And Victorville was really a great track. And Gene Woods, he took this track and he kind of like redid it, promoted it, and it became like one of the biggest things in Victorville that everybody went to Speedway when they had the Victorville Raceway. And I went there too. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But Victorville was really great in the 1990s. Gene Woods and company, they built a really nice fast track. They had like thousands of people in the stands. It was a lot of fun, all the noise and fans. And thank you, Gene Woods, for that one. And he did a great job in the 90s with Victorville. That was really great. And then we had Glen Helen at San Bernardino. It was at the Glen Helen, the motocross track, where they have the big motocross series and stuff. There's a big speedway track at Glen Helen, and it was really long and fast. A couple of guys I just read about this week, they died there, like Division II riders. One guy in particular, I think his name was Barry or something. Ken Barry, I think his name was. I can't remember. And it was fast. And when I saw that track, I was like, oh my God, I got to ride this fast track. It was kind of dangerous. I thought it was like a little tacky and a little bit kind of a scary track. And when I rode the San Bernardino, the Glen Helen track, I was always a little careful because I knew you could probably die on that track. And there was a rider who passed away, rest in peace, at that track. It was fast, and it was, to me, the Glen Helen track seemed a little dangerous. And I was a little like intimidated by that track because I knew that, like you could die, on that track. And there was somebody who did pass away. So it was fast and tacky and dangerous track, I thought, to ride. Anyways, I think it was. So they rode the Glen Helen track for a while. So that was a pretty fast track. And also they had this thing on TV back in the 90s. I think Brad Oxley won it. It was called Speedway America. Do you remember Speedway America? Speedway America was like a TV show. They had every week, I guess, they had Speedway. Sean McConnell was in it, and all the great riders in the 90s were in it. And like I say, Brad Oxley, I believe, won that series. But one day I was watching that TV show, like I enjoy watching Speedway, like I wasn't racing. I was like a family guy at the time. And I had a wife, no more, but at that time I had a wife. And I'm happily single now. That's good. And when I was married, my wife at the time, she didn't know that I was a Speedway rider. Like, I never talked to her about my racing. I just kind of like shut up. And then we were watching Speedway America on TV at my house in Paris, California. And my ex-wife, she said to me, she was my wife at the time, and she said to me, why are you watching that stupid motorcycles? And I said, no, it's Speedway. I used to race that sport, and I like watching Speedway. And she said, what? You race Speedway? And I go, well, yeah, a little bit. And she goes, no, you didn't. You're a fat liar, because I was probably a little fat at the time. I said, no, I race Speedway. And she said, no, there's no way that a guy like you could ride Speedway. And I go, what do you mean, a guy like me? What are you talking about? And she said, yeah, you don't look like a rider. You don't know how to ride a motorcycle, one of those fast Speedway bikes. And I said, that's BS. And I said, do you want to make a bet? I'll buy a Speedway bike and I will ride it for you. And she said, yeah, let's make a bet. So we made a bet. That's how I got into the racing in the 90s. We made a bet, and I went out and I purchased a Speedway bike from a young, talented, up-and-coming Speedway rider named Brent Warner. Do you know Brent Warner? Brent raced in England, and he was a good rider. And at that time, Brent was a young, teenager. And he had this old Westlake that he had used. It was kind of worn out and tired a little bit. It was all pink. It was a pink Westlake. All the fenders were pink and everything. And I said, wow, I never had a pink bike. That's amazing, a pink Speedway bike. It was back in those days where they had a lot of neon colors, you know, like pink and fluorescent green and stuff. So I said, oh, this sounds like fun. Maybe I'll just keep the Speedway bike pink. I bought it from Brent. And then maybe at nighttime, everybody will notice me because I'm riding a pink Speedway bike. Pretty in pink. Oh my gosh. I would never do that again. I was crazy. And so I started to get back to racing again in the 1993, I think it was. And it was like really, you know, amazing to get back on that Speedway bike. I think it was like 17 years or 14 years. I hadn't rode Speedway bike for a long, long time. And I was a little bit older, you know, when I got back on the Speedway bike. But it's like riding a bicycle. You kind of learn, you know, you remember how to ride a Speedway bike if you rode a Speedway bike before. And I had kind of like some bumps and bruises when I first started racing Speedway. I don't know if you can see this. I'll try showing you. I had my first crash. See that? I had a motocross uniform and I crashed into somebody and I went over with my, what do they call it? Ass over tea kettle. I was ass over tea kettle. I had to learn. This is my first crash. I think it says it here somewhere. It says first crash. Yeah. Welcome back to Speedway, Bumblebee. Now you're on your stinger, buddy. I landed on my stinger back then, but hey, everybody crashes, right? We all like go down once in a while. But I learned really quick that we don't want to crash. Crashing is no fun. It hurts a little bit. So I kind of like started doing a little better. And here was a race. I started, look at that. I got my motocross uniform on, my motocross helmet. I have my motocross pants with a little duct tape on, the red duct tape on. My motocross guard. I mean, I was ready for a battle, man. I wasn't going to get hurt. I had enough armor to be like never get hurt racing Speedway. So I was riding Speedway. There I am again, riding my Westlake, my pink Westlake from Brent Warner. And I was number 131 back in that day. And I was riding that pink and blue bike. Look at me. I was full of color. I had green and blue and pink. I mean, what crazy color combination. That was crazy. I can't even believe I was riding in pink. I thought that was fun. And I had my first Speedway team. I had my mechanics here. I had my bike, my Westlake. It was pretty. Bruce Penhall was a factory Westlake rider. And there I was with my pit guys. We had our Torco oil team. I got paid a lot of money when I was riding Torco because I ended up starting to win some main events. And I had a little Speedway team going on, a little purple and pink Torco oil. Torco oil, that's a good oil. You know, I don't ride for Torco now, but some of you guys may disagree, but I had really good experience riding the Torco oil. It never caused my engine to like blow up, and I went really fast. Look at that handsome guy. He was handsome. What happened to him? What happened to him? He got ugly real fast. He got ugly. No, we won't talk about that. But riding the Torco oil, I rode it all the time from my very beginning of Speedway all the way till 2005 in my last Speedway ride. And the Torco oil really worked fantastic. I never blew an engine, and it was just amazing. And I actually won my first main. I think I said 93. It was 1992. July 23rd, 1992. This was my first, I only know because I wrote it down in this book. July 23rd, 1990, my first main since coming back. There I was passing some guy. And I won. I got the monkey off my back, and that was good. I won my first main event on July 23rd, 1992. Look at that, number 131. I was going for that win, and I won. That was really great. And so once you get your first win, here I am again riding, just riding around with my pink pants and my black helmet. It was bad. I had my motocross. After I stopped crashing, I took my chest protector off. I got rid of my chest protector, and I was riding a little bit lighter. So I started winning a little bit, and it was fun, like I didn't feel like I was. Then I started winning all the time. I was really lucky. I started winning. I don't know how that happened. Like I say, it's like riding a bicycle. You got to get your wheels underneath you, and then maybe get back together. And then actually, I had some sponsors. I had like 2 or 3 sponsors at the time. And here was one of my sponsors, Utopia Goggles. I don't know if they're still around anymore. But back then, I had like 2 or 3, I had about 3 or 4 sponsors. And every time I would win a main event, they would give me lots of money. And I would win like $500 or $1,000 every time I won a main event. So I was making a lot of money, like I was cleaning house, and I started winning and then also at the Paris Speedway, I think it was Scott. I think it was Scott that was announcer. He went ahead and did a collection for like 50-50. And then they would do a 50-50 raffle. And then the people in the stands would get half of the money collected. And then the other half they would give like to the winner of the main event. So all the time, I would win like the 50-50 money. Plus my sponsors paid me lots of money. I won like big money with Torque Oil, and I had an attorney named Greg something. I forgot his name. And he paid me big money every time I won a main. So I got really lucky. I was in the support class, and I was like winning. And every week I would get home like $500. And I'm like, I am a support rider, and I'm pulling in $500 a night. Party, woohoo! I was ready to party. So I started like saying, hey, I'm making a business out of racing Speedway. And then here's another main event, scratch main event. I won. I don't know what year. That was 92. I started winning in 92. My second main event, and August 8th, it was another week. It was like 2 weeks later, I think it was. And I started winning more and more main events in those pink and black uniform. It was great. I was like cleaning up some money. We like to make money. We like to make money. So anyways, and so I was kind of learning how to ride. Back when I first started, I had all that uniform on and stuff like that. And it was really good. And I just like started developing myself. And I just started kind of like having to get back into Speedway in the 1990s. It was a little difficult, but hey, like riding that bicycle, you can do it again. I had a little boy named Tyler, and Tyler was riding my motorcycle at the time. Tyler was a Speedway rider at age like 5, and he's kind of not 5 years old no more, but he's off on his own doing his thing. But Tyler was a future Speedway champion. That he never was. So that was fun. We kind of made Speedway back then like a family event. It was good. We were like making it like the whole family, and everybody came and watched Dad win. I liked to win. It was fun. And then also, I think at Costa Mesa, I rode at Costa Mesa back also. It was another track I rode. They had this rider right here. I don't know. I'm trying to find information on this guy and do a blog because he was really an interesting guy. And he got really hurt bad at Costa Mesa. And they went ahead and he tried suing Brad Oxley for big money. And when you sign up to ride at Costa Mesa, they have this thing that says that if you get hurt, you cannot, they're not liable for like lawsuits. So he signed it. And then this guy, he's called the Banana Man. The Banana Man. He got hurt really bad. He flew over the stadium, the wall. He landed into the stands and tumbled like a rag doll. He got hurt really bad. And he tried suing Brad Oxley, and he lost his lawsuit. So he signed that waiver, and he couldn't do anything, but he got hurt really bad. And here he is. Do you remember the Banana Man in the yellow? That's what's his name? Kevin Rubio or something like that. Rubio. Do you remember Kevin Rubio? And that's me beating Kevin. He was a good writer, and he was kind of a different character. There's lots of stories about Kevin, and some of them not so good. And we don't know what happened to Kevin Rubio. And if you know what happened to Kevin Rubio with a Banana Man, if you know, that's me beating. Kevin pushed me pretty hard, though. He was a good writer, but I was able to get the best of Kevin Rubio. Rubio! So that was good. And Kevin, he was like at Costa Mesa, and then he would bring these like balloons back in the 90s, like 1,000 balloons and yellow, all yellow, all yellow. I like that color, but he was too much yellow. I like a little black. I don't like only yellow. If you have too much yellow, it's not good. You want to mix the yellow and black, a little bit of yellow with a lot of black. Oh yeah, it's nice. Look at the uniform. I like that. If you put too much yellow, it's like ugly. It's just yellow's kind of a bad color if it's too much. And Kevin Rubio, he had a lot of yellow. And he brought all these yellow balloons, and it was like Team Jesus and stuff like that. And I think he got in a lot of trouble. He kind of did some weird stuff. I don't want to really talk about it, but he was kind of like got into some trouble, and then he got in that crash, and then he almost died. He'd fly over the wall. They took that off YouTube, and I've been looking for that video on YouTube, and I cannot find Kevin Rubio's crash. So I really want to watch that thing. I mean, if you saw that, maybe you saw that he actually flew over the wall, and it was like on turn 4 at Costa Mesa, heading into the straightaway by the announcer's booth. And then Kevin Rubio, he went over the wall and was like flying over the wall like a rag doll, like head over heels, like ass over tea kettle. He's like, oh. Kevin Rubio was really like wiped out. I think he got hurt bad. It was ugly, and it's no longer on YouTube. So if you can find that, you let me know. I want to see that. So I was able to win some main events when I made my comeback in the 90s. And here's me with a Costa Mesa Speedway trophy girl. She was cute. This was like one of my cutest. I think Brad Oxley knows that girl. And that was one of my main event victories. I was a little bit bigger than. Look at those legs. My gosh, she was sexy. And so there I was. This was in 1992, I think it was, on my comeback. Brian asked me, what year was that? It was 1992. Look at that girl. She was foxy as heck. She was gorgeous. I think I should have got divorced and met a new woman at the time. I was married, so I guess I couldn't do too much. But those legs, wow. For an American girl, she was hot. And, so that was one of my main event. I couldn't kiss the girl because I was like married at the time. But, you get me on the track now, maybe I could kiss the girl if she would kiss me. And then here's another foxy trophy girl we had back in the 90s. In the 70s, the girls were kind of, well, there were some nice girls, don't get me wrong, but there's some real ugly trophy girls. I had the ugliest trophy girls, some of them. I had a couple cute girls, but most of my trophy girls in the 70s were really ugly. And she's like, do you want to kiss? And I'm like, no, not really. I'm kind of picky about the girls I kiss. So I didn't want to kiss these ugly girls. So, but in the 90s, it wasn't politically correct to kiss the trophy girls. So here's a trophy girl in the 90s. She was kind of cute. I like this girl. And she looked like kind of girl I could take home to mom, but I guess I couldn't. But this was a trophy I won, a main event, and she had nice legs too. She was pretty cute. I like this girl. I wonder what she looks like today. I bet she's not as pretty. I'm not as pretty either, but I bet she doesn't look so sexy today. I like that girl. What's her phone number? I think I'll give her a call. Just joking. So I raced in the 90s. It was like 92 or 93. Brian, he asked me, what year was that? And it was like 92. So you can ask me any questions. I'll be happy to answer them. I'm live on Facebook and YouTube right now. And I have a new system here. And we're going to just, I don't know, I'm testing this out. I have a new system here. Oh, I don't want to touch that button. And so, yeah, we're having a good time here on Facebook and YouTube. Actually, I had to switch my live streams. I had this old live stream called Melon, and it was horrible. And I just had all these problems with this live stream thing, and it was just the word. The guys were so embarrassed at the Melon. They said that they were going to send me all these gifts, like a new headset and a new microphone. They were embarrassed because they just ruined a lot of my shows. And we switched now to the StreamYard, and it's looking good. We're really happy about these shows, and we're going to have some great shows coming up. Also, when I was racing in the 90s, I would tell you some stories. I was working my way up to D1. You know, I was like a D2 rider, and then I work up. D2 is intermediate, if you don't know what D2 is. There's about 4 or 5 people on Facebook watching me right now. And what D2 is, it's an intermediate speedway rider. And then I was working my way up to the top, which I got to the top. But when you start off, you have to kind of advance. You can't just start off at the top. And here was a racer that I always had problems with, Mike Reed. Do you know Mike Reed? He was a good rider. See him trying to take me out? He was a good rider. And he's a starter, I think, over at the City of Industry Speedway track. He's a good guy. And Mike Reed was my nemesis when I first started riding Speedway. Mike Reed was really good. I mean, that guy was a good, solid support rider. And he was winning the main events until I came along. Then I said, Mike, move over. I want to win those main events. Move over, Mike. I was going to take him down. And I had good success against Mike. But at first, he really was pushing me hard. And he was giving me a terrible time. He was a good rider. But eventually, I got, I got a good riding on Mike. And we had good. And so that was it. And then we went to Victorville. Do you remember Victorville Speedway? Gene Woods ran that track. It was cool. They had all the D1 riders at Victorville. It was really great. Victorville was awesome. And there was lots of people there. The stands were full. You know, the stands were right on the racetrack, so everybody was on top of you. Everybody was blowing their bad breath on top of you. Here's a picture of me at Victorville. It was like a day race. I ended up winning that race. I guess I see that I was always a pole rider. I was wearing those pink and black uniform, and I was riding the pole. That was at Victorville. And I had a few good rides over there. It was a good track. Victorville was fun. I think that's JT there. I'm not sure. That's JT. He's passed away, the photographer. Do you remember JT? He's a good guy, and he's a good photographer. But that's me blasting it away at Victorville. We rode. It was fun. You know, one time I was racing at Victorville, and there was all these guys. I was working my way up to D1 at the time, and I saw all the D1 riders at Victorville. And these guys were all like legends, and they were all good. And Gene Woods got everybody over at Victorville racing, and they were good. And the stands were full of people and everything. And I was riding, I think, a support class and working my way up to Division I. It was really hard because it was all like all-star Division I riders. Hard to go up because the Division I was full of really great riders. So, I was racing a Division II race there, support, and I have a video, but I think I lost it. It was on like VHS. I don't think I have it no more. But I was riding, and somebody on the infield took this video. It was really close up, and I'm riding. I was a pole rider. I like to ride the pole. It's fastest way around the track. And then I kept doing wheelies and stuff and hitting these holes and lifting. During the turn, I don't like that one too much. There's a few holes in the Victorville racetrack. I didn't like that. And then I was in the main event at the Victorville. I have the video. At least I had the video. I think it's gone. And Carlos Cardona. Do you remember Carlos Cardona, number 82? Rest in peace, Carlos Cardona. He had passed away of cancer, I believe. Carlos was a good guy. He's the one that introduced Billy the Bullet Hamill to Speedway back in the day. Carlos was an old-time rider, and he was cleaning his Speedway bike outside of his house, I guess near Pasadena or Arcadia, I think it was. And Billy the Bullet Hamill was just a young boy, and he would like come by and he would like see Carlos washing his Speedway bike every day. And Billy was like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm washing my Speedway bike." And so eventually Billy the Bullet Hamill, he came to the races with Carlos Cardona. And Billy Hamill, he didn't know anything about Speedway. He was like a little kid. And Billy Hamill was like, "I think I could be a world champion here one day." And Billy the Bullet Hamill was 1996 world champion. And Billy the Bullet, he got his start from Carlos Cardona. And I raced Carlos over at Victorville during this time. I wish I had a picture of Carlos. I love that guy. And this was one of the rides here at the Victorville. It was during the day before the night came. And I ended up winning that race. But I was winning this main event, and my bike kept lifting, and I kept getting out of control. I couldn't ride that bike very good. And then Carlos Cardona came and won that main event. Carlos, I can't hate you because you've died now, so I rest in peace. But I was mad, Carlos took me out, and he's a good rider. But I just had a difficult time that night at the Victorville Raceway. And when I was racing back in the day, they had like my Torco, they gave money. They gave $23,000 away for people of the Team Torco, 1992 Team Torco. I got some of that money. I got a lot of that money, $23,000. My name was listed here somewhere if I can find it. Oh my gosh, I don't know. Yeah, here I am. My name was listed here as one of the money earners. I don't know if you can see it. Let's see, 1993 Team Torco. There I am, Brian, Buffington, Speedway. We won a lot of money. They were paying all these riders. I was a Speedway rider for Team Torco, and I won a lot of money. I mean, every time I'd win a main event, Torco would be like dishing out some money. So we liked that oil company. So that was cool. And so let's see, what else? Well, went ahead and moved into D1, and Division 1 is like where all the fast guys are. And I kind of wanted to ride the D1, and because it was fun, and Division 1 was fast. You had all the fast guys, and they had all these legends in Division 1, and it was hard to win. I was winning like $500 to $1,000 a night, winning in support class because I won a lot of mains. So they said, "Brian, you can't keep doing this. You have to move up to Division 1. You're too good. Like you're cleaning everybody's clocks." So sad to say, the money stopped because it's hard to win a main event in Division 1. It's much easier to win a support division main event, but when you're riding the Division 1, it's very difficult. And then I start riding Division 1 against all the top guns, and it was not easy, and it was hard to win a main event. Here's a picture of me with Robert fencing, the Gator. Robert and I were just dicing it out there at Paris. and we were just going for it. Robert was fast. I mean, if you race Robert fencing, you had to give it full throttle. And we went ahead and just, went for it as hard as we can. And these guys were all good. Robert Fencing was a Premier League racer in Europe, in England, and Robert Fencing, the Gator. Do you remember the Gator? He was a friend of mine on Facebook, and I don't know what happened to him. Robert Fencing's gone, but we like Robert Fencing. And I had races against Flying Mike Faria. Do you remember Flying Mike Faria? He was good. And there's Flying Mike Faria and me racing at I don't know where it was, Costa Mesa or Paris. He was riding around. I was riding the pole. I don't know if you can see it. No, I guess there's the pole a little bit right there. Make sure. And just went ahead and, giving it some gas. I raced pretty much against all the riders, all the top riders. Here's my only little program. I was right on the 10-yard line, and I raced against Chris, the kid, Manchester, Robert, the Gator fencing, Mike, whoever that is, and Dennis Briggs, and me on the 10. So I was just a low yardage 10-yard rider. It was difficult. Every night we'd be racing against Brad Oxley, Bobby Schwartz, Steve Lucero, Chris, the kid, Manchester, Robert Fencing. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, if you're like a Division I rider, that's hard because these guys are good. And I will tell you a story that happened to me. One time I was racing Division I at the Paris Speedway, the Lake Paris Speedway back in '93, I think it was. And I was on the 0 or 10-yard line. I think I was on like the 0 or 10-yard line. And the main event happened. I made the main event, and I was like, I'm going to win this main event. Like, I had my mind. But in my race, I had like Mike Faria. I had Phil Collins. I had Scotty Brandt. I had Bobby Schwartz and Steve Lucero. And they were all on the 50-yard line, and I was at the like 10 or something like that. I don't remember. And the announcer, I think it was Scott, before the race started, he said, "Hey, look at Brian. He's alone on the main event. It's a handicap main event." And that was with Division I with all the good riders. And Scott said, "Hey, Brian is in the front." And then all the guys, like 5 guys were on the 50. They had all these guys on the 50. And then the announcer said, I'll make a bet with you that Brian doesn't win the main event. And then some drunk guy from the stands, he came and he said to the announcer, "I'll bet you Brian wins the main event." That's hard against those guys. So anyways, the race started, and then I was winning the race because I was out front. I was winning the race for almost the whole race. It was like 6 laps. So it's kind of difficult to hold off like Faria, Lucero, Phil Collins, Chris Manchester, Bobby Schwartz, and all these guys. It's all the who's who of Speedway back in the 90s. And I had to go fast, like I had to give it all I had. And I was just going as fast as I can. And then I was winning the whole race, actually. I don't know how I did it, but I was winning. I was, riding as hard as I could. I knew that, I could not like give an inch because these guys were all like, coming up on me. They were coming up on me. And Mike Faria was the first guy. He came up on me. This guy, I think it was this race, actually, this picture. I was in the main event, and Mike Faria was riding on the outside. There's number 1, the United States champion, Flying Mike Faria. He was good. I mean, that guy was sensational. He was definitely in his prime back then, and he was flying on the outside like Flying Mike Faria. He was fast. That guy was good. So Mike was flying on the outside of me, and I was going as fast as I could. And then Mike, the last lap or last turn, I forgot, he passed me just by a little bit, and Mike took home the bacon. and I got second place in the main event. And then the announcer, he went ahead and said to the guy, okay, Brian lost the race. He lost the main event. Where's my, it was $20, I think it was. Where's my $20? And then the guy was running out the door. Oh, I was running. And he's like, hey, come back here. So the guy was going to wait. If I won the main event, he was going to collect the paycheck of the announcer. I think it was the whole paycheck. And then if he lost, he was going to not honor his word, and he was going to run off of the out of the stadium because it was one of the last. It was the last race of the night. So the announcer never got his $20, and I didn't win the main event. But I think I got second place. You know, it wasn't bad, but it was hard. You know, to win these guys. They were good. The Division I riders are amazing, and even today, you know, like if you're going to win a Division I main event, you better go fast because these guys are ripping. So that was, you know, one of my fun rides back then, and it was like, you know, one of the exciting events, you know, is almost winning that main event, having 5 guys back on the 50, and I was on like the 10. And I had to like win these guys, and they were fast. So the 1990s was really good racing. I mean, it was fast. And like I said earlier, there's so many legends, you know, these guys. I mean, all these guys, Hancock and Ermolenko and Hamill. And, you know, I mean, it was just a list that goes on and on. Oxley. I mean, there were just so many great riders. And if you miss the 1990s, you missed a really good time. I mean, the 90s was awesome, and the riders were really good. So it was just a time that was there was a lot of tracks. There was like 4 or 5 tracks back in the 90s. So we got to ride a lot of Speedway, and it was really good. You know, you could get real fast by all that practice, and the 90s was really good. So thank you so much for watching the 1990s Speedway program. It was really good. And please, you know, if you like the show, like and subscribe. We have some really great writers coming on. We have like Siggy, Dennis Sigalos. He's coming on for part 2 soon. So stay tuned. And if you get notified, you'll know when we have the Siggy show. This guy was a really champion, Dennis Sigalos. He was one of the great Speedway riders in American history. And he was with us before Christmas. And we had a really good time in the Hive with Dennis Sigalos. We're going to talk more about the British League, about his experiences, some of his controversial races. Dennis was kind of a character and a really good guy, so we're going to have a fun time. And you won't want to miss Dennis Sigalos. And we got a couple of young riders, Sebastian Palomisi. Hopefully we'll get Gino Manzares on the show. And we have a whole list of young riders. Aaron Fox is on deck. We got to get his butt in the Hive. He's waiting. So we have really good shows coming up. We had Larry Huffman last week. We had Bruce Penhall. We had some really amazing people. And we're going to have some more in the future. So we have lots of people. There's lots of guys going to come on the show. So we do the show like daily, and we have a lot of fun. And we're just having a good time hanging out, talking Speedway, specifically 1990s Speedway. It was a good time. So if you missed the 1990s, you really missed the boat. So thank you so much for joining us today in the Beehive. And we're talking a little 90s Speedway. And we appreciate your time. And we'd like you to ride safe. Be safe, everyone. And take care of yourself. And always stay on 2 wheels. And until next race, take care. And we'll see you next time.